So chances are you've probably seen this PC case before, with that smart glass panel at the front and another covering an entire side, and you could be forgiven for thinking that this is another iteration of LianLi's amazingly gorgeous O11 Dynamic. Well, it's not. Of course, once someone somewhere comes up with a classic, the imitations will always be close behind. This one, though, belongs to GameMax, and it is from their fresh Infinity range, and it is much, much cheaper than the O11 Dynamics. But with anything that's trying to take inspiration from something so perfect, there are a few problems that have slipped through the quality checks. But I must say that there is one major improvement that GameMax have included on the Infinity case here. More on those in a moment though. Let's take a look at the pricing first, as that can be the most important factor when it comes to buying a new case from a proper retailer. The new Evo version of the LianLi O11 can hit an eye-watering £190 here in the UK at the time of recording this video, and the more normal version will still hit around the £140 mark. Now the Infinity though from GameMax costs under £70, which is a colossal saving for something that looks so similar. But is it worth it? Well, yes it is, but it is not without some problems that are kind of typical with a new design. The tooling in the factory is just off when it comes to a couple of aspects. Don't get me wrong at this stage, we absolutely love this case, but the second generation should hopefully iron out a couple of dodgy measurements. This is as good a time as any to get all of the glitches out in the open. Now my dad actually built this one for me for one of his clients, so he could learn from his experience of what the GameMax Infinity has to offer. So glitch number one, if you use a radiator vertically, as we have here towards the side of the case, the gap between the edge of the radiator and the flimsy rubber grommet is rather small. That it's really almost impossible to feed cables through, especially the 24-pin motherboard cable. And it's not as if you could move it over a bit to make some space either. The left side of the radiator is out of range of any metal work to screw it into. Now we haven't screwed it to anything in our build here, not that it really matters anyway, it's not going anywhere. We could just hope that this can be fixed for when GameMax releases next iteration. Now glitch number two, and this is not really a bad one really, and just something that we picked up after having built a good number of PCs in O11 Dynamics. In the LianLi O11 cases, we've seen the motherboard tray covers up access to part of the CPU backplating, making any swap outs a pain as the motherboard has to be unscrewed. In the Infinity, there is a power supply in the way, thanks to some novel positioning, but that can be overcome by removing the PSU screws and dropping it slightly out the way. It's just a little bit of a faff if you want to change your cooler. And that brings us to the best by far design point of the Infinity. Thanks to that odd power supply position, there is literally a massive area underneath it where literally all of your cables at the back can be sensibly stowed away. And as a bonus, there is a metal plate that you can cover your rat's nests, so when you open up the rear of the case, it at least looks nice and neat. Now my dad, looking at this attempt, doesn't really care much for cable management, but I will say he tends to swap out parts on a pretty regular basis on his PCs, and as no one sees behind a solid steel panel, what's really the point of making it look neat back there? Anyway, this box shape is brilliant for stashing away that included 6-port RGB hub that takes care of power and lighting, making wiring really simple. This PC case from GameMax comes with that hub, a remote control, and 6 RGB fans in the box. Now our fans did arrive separate from this case though, not sure if this is how it's done with the retail units, as this was supplied by GameMax for the sake of this review, but it does mean that my dad could install them where he felt were best, and the result is what you see here. And finally, glitch number 3. Having 3 fans across the bottom like this means you have to remove the case feet to install all 4 fan screws for the fans at the far ends of the case, which is pretty bizarre if you ask me, and something I've not really had to do on a PC case before. Now there are plenty of cutouts to feed cables through, though the grommets included are a massive pain to feed cables through them, with the grommets becoming unattached very easily. I did remove them in the end as they just really got on my nerves, and they didn't make any difference to the overall build aesthetic anyway. There is also a tremendous amount of space at the top of the case, and it can strip down just like the LianLi Dynamic and go back together easily enough. Now I did notice, however, that there are no captive screws on top and side panels, so make sure you take care when opening up the case. I have dropped these pretty much every time, as I'm so used to my LianLi O11 Dynamic just behind me here. And just to be completely transparent about the parts we used for a quick temperature test, the PC is built on top of the Gigabyte Z590 Gaming X motherboard using an Intel i7 10700 CPU. Now the CPU is being cooled by the Corsair H100X 240mm cooler with 2 fans, and it's got an EVGA for the Win 3 3060 Ti in it. For storage, we went with a Kingston PCIe 4.0 M.2 drive, and the PSU is again by EVGA, and it's their 600 watt 80 plus certified power supply. Hardware monitored during a 10-minute single core test saw the CPU hit a high of 64 degrees, while a multi-core test for 10 minutes saw a max temperature of 82 degrees. Now, of course, this is highly reliant on the cooler being used, but the fans have been set up with intakes on the bottom and side for the cooler and then vented out the rear. There are no fans on the top, as we were only provided with 6 fans with the case, but if you did want to vent hot air from the top of the case, this is entirely possible as well. You'll just need to purchase a few extra fans. Now, for all you number nerds out there, some general specs about this case, which comes in black and white. The chassis is made from 0.8 to 1.5mm steel, making it surprisingly lighter, under 8 kilograms, and there are those 2 tempered glass sides. It does take the usual motherboard sizes, being ITX, Micro ATX, and ATX, though the former might look a little bit silly in such a big case. On top are the power switch, headphones, and USB 3.0 type A port, but no reset switch. You can fit 4 2.5-inch SSDs on that removable box cover, which is a nice use of space and again keeps the wiring cluttered down once more. There are 7 expansion slots covered that snap out, and you don't have to fight them to get them out, which is nice. There are up to 10 positions for 120mm fans, 3 on top, 3 on the bottom, 1 on the back, and 3 vertically on the interior panel. The maximum radiator size on an AIO cooler is 360mm and can be positioned at the top, though vertically you can fit up to 240mm because of the fan space limitations. Graphics cards can stretch up to 360mm, and CPU coolers are limited in height to 170mm for those of you using more traditional radiator and fan coolers. Overall, the chassis is 420mm deep, 272mm wide, and 399mm tall. The GameMax Infinity is an incredible case overall, really, and something we just really enjoyed building in. The cost is pretty good as well, and if you want something that looks decent and has enough space to really make things nice and neat with cables, then this is definitely a great option to go for. Thank you very much for checking out this video review of the GameMax Infinity PC case. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button, subscribe to keep up with our latest tech and gaming videos, and also let us know in the comments down below what you think about this GameMax case. Is it something you could see yourself building in, or would you rather stick to a LianLi 011 dynamic style case, although this is pretty much the same thing? Let us know in the comments down below what you think. As I say, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.